Hello everyone. So I'm Michael Spence and I'm the lead researcher on CEDAR's Lighthouse project in self-supervised and semi-supervised learning. And in this video I'm going to be talking about one of the use cases of semi-supervised learning, which is sentiment analysis of text. So the goal of sentiment analysis is to automatically extract from a bit of text what kind of emotion is being expressed in that text. At the most basic level, this could be whether the emotion is positive or negative. So in this example, you can have a bit of text saying great service for an affordable price, which is obviously a positive statement. At the other end, you could have a bit of text saying horrible services, and this is obviously a negative statement. You can also have more complicated emotions being expressed in text, such as irony or sarcasm. And again, the goal of sentiment analysis is to automatically determine which of these emotions are being expressed. So this has several possible applications. So for businesses, it's important to know how your reputation is doing. One way of doing this is to analyze social media to see what kind of opinions people are expressing about you there. Sentiment analysis is obviously useful for this. You could go through comments on Facebook, or you could go through tweets and see what people are saying about your company. So a second possible use of sentiment analysis could be analyzing markets. So when you're trying to determine the prices of stocks, for instance, it's very important to know what people in the public are saying about a company. A quite extreme example of this was several years ago, Kylie Jenner put out a tweet saying that she was no longer using Snapchat. Within a few hours, the share price had dropped several $billion. And yeah, this is quite an extreme example, but in general, it is very important to understand what the general sentiment is when trying to predict changes in prices. So generally, when people are making these sentiment models, they follow a supervised methodology. So this is when you have many human-labeled examples of text with their sentiments manually annotated. So in this example, you'd have food was nice, service very quick. Would be hand labeled as good. Food was bad, or food was inedible, would be hand labeled as bad. And using many, generally thousands of these hand labeled examples, you could train a model to automatically tag text with its sentiment. And this works very well when you have lots of labeled examples, but it's often quite difficult to produce these hand annotated examples. If you're dealing with large amounts of text, it's very time consuming to go through all of them. And if you're dealing with complex emotions, it can be, sometimes quite difficult and quite time consuming to tag bits of text. So this is where semi-supervised learning comes into play. If you've seen any of our previous content, you'll know that the main benefit of semi-supervised learning is that it allows us to use a much smaller amount of labeled data than a purely supervised approach. And it does this by incorporating information found in unlabeled data into its predictions. So there's been many experiments performed using semi-supervised learning for sentiment analysis, and I'll talk about some of them now. So in a recent paper from 2019, researchers looked at using semi-supervised learning to automatically determine whether reviews on IMDb were positive or negative. So the original training data set included about 50,000 labeled examples, and what they did was they limited themselves to 2,000 training examples to see how semi-supervised learning would compare to a normal supervised approach. And they found that by using a semi-supervised learning approach to incorporate unlabeled examples into their predictions, they managed to outperform a purely supervised method. So in the graph here, you can see that a semi-supervised method achieves 72% accuracy, whereas a purely supervised method only achieves 64% accuracy, which is quite a significant improvement. So a second example of semi-supervised learning being used for sentiment analysis can be found in a 2016 paper, which investigated using semi-supervised learning to automatically detect sarcasm in tweets. So an example of one of their training instances would be, "Thanks manager for putting me on schedule for Sunday," which is obviously sarcastic. So how they compared semi-supervised learning to supervised learning on this dataset was when they were training the semi-supervised learning approach, they only used 40% of the labeled data, whereas when they trained the supervised approach, they used the entire data set. And you can see here from the graph that even though they only used 40% of the data for the semi-supervised approach, they managed to achieve very similar performance overall, with only 1% difference in model accuracy. So from these two examples, we can see the potential of semi-supervised learning for sentiment analysis, and we can see how well it can do with very limited data. This is obviously a benefit to businesses, as they would therefore have to spend less time annotating data, which could save time and resources for them. So thank you very much for watching this video. Again, if you have any more questions about any of the things I've talked about, or if you'd like to get more involved in the Lighthouse projects, feel free to contact me. There's my email at the bottom of the screen there. And again, yeah, thanks very much for listening.